guys? Welcome to the RTV Eagle Show. I'm Johnny Mack, and this is Brad DeFrancesco, and we're here to give you a Week 2 preview against the Atlanta Falcons. Um, it may not seem like a bit like it is, but it's a huge game this week after watching these 1 o'clock games today, and we saw the Cowboys, Lions, and 49ers all lose this week. So this is going to be a huge matchup this week to get a win here and start 2-0 this week. What are your thoughts on heading into Week 2, Brad?
I'm confident for the most part. I feel like the first game, Eagles game, obviously, I feel like Hurts didn't have that strong of a start, but I mean it's bound to happen. It's like just get the rust off from the off season. But I feel like he's gonna bounce back, obviously. And I honestly felt like the defense was what's the word? The best part of the whole game.
Yeah, I
They
can
held it
agree
down
on
the
that.
most from.
Yeah. I felt like they made the key important stops when Hurts made those turnovers, which tremendously helped them because last year when it got late into the season, Hurts was still making those turnovers. The defense just was not making those key stops that that they were making earlier in the year to help the Eagles skate by with a win. But I'm gonna start here with the offensive preview this week. Coming out today, earlier this morning, it came across that A.J. Brown is out with a hamstring injury. He's going to miss this week, which is a huge blow. And so we need a huge week from the wide receiver and tight end group to step up big this time. You got one of the top receivers in football. I believe he's a top 5 wide receiver. Arguably some people argue different, but that's how I feel about him. And it's Jalen Hurts' favorite target. So that's that's a huge blow to this team. So what are you looking for out of the wide receiver and tight end groups this week?
I think Devontae is going to have a big game now that AJ, because towards the end of the first game, they started Devontae had some key catches, especially to get that one of the first downs towards the end of the game. So I feel like Devontae is going to come up big, and I feel like Goddard's going to have a big game, and obviously Saquon's going to do his own thing. But overall, I think Devontae, Saquon are going to do their thing.
Yeah, we'll get to Saquon in a minute, but that's I got more of a thing here. Like Smith, I think Smith is we have a 1A and a 1B. We have 2 number 1 wide receivers in this team, and I think no matter even if AJ's out, Smith is going to get his own. He's going to go out. I'm going to expect him to have a huge game this week. That's just who he is. He's going to go out there. He's a baller. He's going to work hard. He's going to play. He's going to get open. He's going to run after the catch, and I think he's going to have a huge game this week. But for Goddard, for somebody who as us Eagles fans, we think Goddard is a top talented tight end in this league, and he can be really good when used correctly sometimes, but who knows? A lot of people around the league don't think he's as good of a tight end as us Eagles fans do. So it's time for him to show that he is the top tight end in this league. Why the Eagles drafted him? Why the Eagles incented him? Why we think and what he can be? He needs to go out there and show that he can be that and help Hurts out with this offense this week because he's going to be probably, I would assume, their second leading receiver this week. And you're gonna have to Smith is going to get double covered, which he's usually not getting double covered as much because A.J. Brown's on the other side of the field, and A.J. Brown at this moment in time is a much better wide receiver. And then Jahan Dotson, I mean, this is a guy who was drafted in the first round by Washington out of Penn State. He kind of didn't really have a big impact in Washington. He was the number 2. He scored 11 touchdowns with Washington. I mean, he has the most touchdowns for out of all the wide receivers in that draft class. So he's obviously has a knack for getting in the end zone at times, but the Eagles gave up a 3rd-round pick for this team. He's a first-round draft pick. The Eagles gave up a 3rd-round pick for him. Now it's time for him to go out there and show, let's have a good game. Let's get out there and show that you deserve to be, in this league and that you were drafted in the first round for a reason. He hasn't shown that, yet. And I think this is a week for him to step up and show that, he can be that guy. The Eagles needed a number 3 receiver. The reason why we went and got him was they didn't have it. Quez Watkins, who goes missing, dropped that ball in the Super Bowl. We have Jahan Dotson, who was highly sought out in the draft. People said he had the best hands in the draft. So this is some guy we need him to step up big this week without A.J. Brown.
Yeah, you didn't see him a lot in the first game, but now that AJ's out, I feel like it's going to be him and Devontae getting most of the looks.
And I think that's just because he's new to the offense. He didn't really have much, training camp action. He had to get used to this offense. It's a brand new offense for everybody. So it's a brand new offense for him to learn. And it's, it seems like it's a more complicated offense that, the Eagles run this year compared to last year where a lot of us thought it was a high school offense. So he had to catch up fast. So hopefully he's ready to go and he can be, out on the field as the number 2 wide receiver for majority of the game.
Mhm.
And then another player we got to talk about is Saquon Barkley. It seems like he is going to be the main focal point of this offense since I mean, I said it when they signed him, like, we're going to see a Christian McCaffrey effect here where, this offense is going to go through him. Do you
Yeah.
expect to see the same thing this week?
I expect to see the same. I don't think nothing less is gonna happen. I feel like if anything, he's gonna have hopefully 2 touchdowns again. I like to see him in the screenplays. I feel like since obviously AJ is gonna be out, you're gonna see a lot of screens to Saquon. My opinion. If they're not using Devontae, they're not using Dotson, they have no choice but to go to Saquon. And what other person better to go to besides him if
Yeah, I
AJ's out?
agree. I agree. I mean, I think this offense needs to play through Saquon. I expect them to play through Saquon. I expect them to play through Saquon all year long. You don't pay top dollar for a running back of Saquon's caliber to not use him. I expect him this week to, I think he would have 24 total touches last week. I know he had 20 plus, but I don't know the exact number. But I mean, I expect him to have a lot more this week. I mean, I expect him to, I expect him to have at least 20 plus carries. I expect him to catch 5 or 6 passes. I expect him to have a huge game offensively. And, that takes the pressure off Hurst. It takes the pressure off, Jahan Dotson. It takes the pressure off Goddard. It takes the pressure off Smith and whoever else is out there on the field at this time. And you have a great line. The line played excellent last week. I mean, Becton and Jurgens, this is the first time they're playing a new position in this league. So they're going to struggle a little bit. But, I mean, they played a hell of a game. Becton looks like an absolute monster out there. Sometimes he goes and makes those hits on those defensive linemen. You're like, holy cow, that man is huge. And, Lane
Mhm.
Johnson, obviously, I feel like this new alignment, affects a veteran guy like Lane Johnson, who's so used to, lining up back a little bit more, off the center. Now he has to move so much more forward to this new alignment rule where, that might affect him because we saw him give up a sack last week, which, we're not, accustomed to seeing him give up sacks. And
No.
that's where now we go to the man of the hour, the highest paid man on the team, the leader of this team, leader of this offense, the guy that, we expect to, be a potential MVP, to lead us to a Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts. What are you expecting to see from Jalen Hurts this week and, going forward?
He's obviously going to have a bounce back game, especially because of the first half, first quarter, especially. Um, he's definitely going to have a bounce back game. I feel like he's going to do what he has to do. He's going to learn from what happened. He's not going to make the same mistakes. He rarely makes the same mistakes, especially since last year. He doesn't make the same mistakes often. He learned from them quickly, and now that you have AJ out, you still, even with AJ out, you still have 3 more weapons to use
Yeah. Yeah, he
that can
does. He
do what
does.
they
He
have to do
has.
for you. So
And I think this is why I agree. I think this is why you go out and get a Saquon Barkley because then you trade for a Jahan Dotson who's a first round talent, and you have a fully healthy Goddard, which you didn't have, most of all of last year. Where Hurts has other weapons he can use, and he doesn't have to rely on AJ Brown. I think this is a game where he can go out and prove that. I didn't think he played extremely terrible last week, but I mean the 2 interceptions, they were 2 horrible throws, 2 horrible reads. That's the one thing
yeah,
he's gonna have to limit this week. He's gonna limit those turnovers. He can't turn the ball over. If you don't have anything, just don't force it. Live to fight another down. Punt the football. Don't give them good field position. And, even if you throw that in, trying to force them third down, I'd rather you throw it away and punt the football and make them drive all the way down the field instead of giving them the ball at the 50-yard line or the 30-yard line, and where they're right there ready to score. The defense actually made those big plays last week that saved the Eagles because they could easily have been down 21-0 fast, and it could have been a completely different ball game. But the defense, they stepped up and made those plays. I want to see, if he does go through his progression, he does go through his reads, and there's still nobody open. Don't wait till the fourth quarter hurts. Go make that play, go make that run early. I know you're trying to protect yourself. You're not trying to make those runs unless you absolutely have to. And like he did last week, late in the game where he's like, I got to win this game. We got to put this team on back and win this game and get that first down and use those legs. I want to see that more earlier in the game. I know you don't want your quarterback running and taking those blows and stuff like that, but sometimes, to win a game, you can't throw those interceptions. You got to use those legs and make those plays. Let's turn this over to the defensive side of the football where I personally, I was impressed by, the few, key stops they had, that prevented, the Green Bay Packers from scoring a few touchdowns, and held them to field goals, which ultimately helped them win the game. But overall, I didn't think the defense was that impressive last week. They had some flashes of, good stuff. Zach Baun looked excellent.
Eleven
Nakobe Dean,
tackles.
yeah, he had 11 solo tackles, 15 combined tackles, 2 sacks. I mean, he had an amazing week, and it's great to see somebody, at the linebacker position play that well, and he was all over the field. Dean was solid. Dean had a good week. I expect him to get better as the week goes on. He obviously, Fangio came across this week saying that he is, he beat out Devin White for that starting spot. And let's go straight into Devin White. What's his new role on this team?
Yeah, that's honestly a really good question. But you saw, I know you saw because you watched the preseason games also. But Nakobe Dean in the preseason was looking fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't know if I can say I didn't see it coming, but I just think that with Devin White getting beat out for that position, I don't know what his future is with
I
with the
agree.
Eagles. Honestly,
It's a weird situation.
Obviously, obviously, I would like to see him, but he just got beat out by Nakobe Dean, and it's deserved.
Yeah.
It's deserved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
It was a really weird, turn of events because Devin White was getting all the first team reps all season, and I didn't know if that was and Nakobe Dean was getting some, but he wasn't getting all the reps, first team reps. I was wondering if Vic Fangio was trying to light a fire under Dean's ass. You need to earn this spot. Like nothing's given in this league, and Devin White, I don't know it honestly at this point. It's weird. I mean, he lost his spot. He was an All Pro. He's All Pro in 2019. He was a great player on that defense. In 2020 when the Bucks won the Super Bowl, and then last year he got beat out and he got like disgruntled. So it's going to be a weird situation. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think they trade him, but I mean, the best part of his game in his career has been he's been able to get after the quarterback. 2 years ago he had 9 sacks. His physical metrics, he is about the same exact size as Hassan Reddick. And Hassan Reddick was somebody who came in this league and he played the middle linebacker position to start his career. And, it just didn't work out for him. And then they ended up moving him his final year in Arizona to pass rusher. And he had a great season there. He went to, and then capitalized on it again, had a great season with Carolina and then came to the Eagles. And that's why he got paid a little bit to come to play for the Eagles. And he was, a 10 plus sack guy here, 11 plus sacks, both seasons with the Eagles. So maybe we see them experiment with them. I know Devin White said earlier this week he was asked like what his new role in this team is, and he told, "Why don't you ask Nick Sirianni?" So obviously something's going on there where he doesn't even know his role in this this team at the moment. But maybe they'll experiment him with being a pass rusher because obviously that he's not going to play those positions, but they might keep him around for depth. I don't see them trading him because I don't think anybody really wants him. If anybody wanted him, they probably would have offered a trade at this point when, the reports were coming out after training camp that the Eagles had huge strength in numbers in that linebacking group. But I guess they're going to keep him around for depth in case, Baun or Dean get hurt. I mean, Dean has had a few injuries in his career so far, his young career. So maybe they'll keep him around as depth. But I mean, I expect him, if he's not going to be an edge rusher, I expect him to be a leader, push Dean and Baun to be better players every day and try to win, that job back because maybe you have that opportunity at some point to be, thing. But maybe they'll experiment with him pass rusher because then that is, we'll get to that next point. That is seemingly has to be the biggest problem on this defense. They look non-existent last week. I think the Eagles had 2 total sacks and both of them were by Zach Baun, who's the linebacker, But what do you expect from this pass rush this week?
I'm hoping for at least a sack or 2, maybe a forced fumble. But like I'm not gonna get too I'm not gonna really get my hopes up because like I'm not really expecting that. You know what I mean? Blankenship had an interception last week. I'm just expecting, the safeties, and I can't really see the Falcons going deep. But if they do, I have the confidence in our corners and our safeties to do what they have to do. But I'm not too confident in the sacks, but I'm hoping that they can at least put some pressure on the QBs this week.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see a lot more out of those guys this week. I know last week, Jason Kelce said earlier on WIP this week And I think it was yesterday or, maybe it was Friday at some point. Howard Eskin said the same thing on WIP, that the field may have played a major issue. The field was wet. They
Was
watered the field
slippery.
down. The game started at 9 o'clock, so they didn't have time. If you wet it during the day, it's gonna dry. It's gonna at least dry out. So the game started late. The field was wet. Jason Kelce said that is a major effect on these pass rushers sometimes getting off the football. So maybe that had a slight effect on why we didn't see as much. But I mean, there's guys like Bryce Huff. Like, you need to do more. You can't let a 35-year-old Brandon Graham, about to be 36-year-old, play more snaps than you at this point. You got paid $54 million. You need to go out there and you need to prove that you deserve this $54 million. Josh Sweat, the rumor is you want a new contract. You want more money. You need to be the guy who was, sacking the quarterback 10 plus times in 2022 when they made the Super Bowl. You need to be better. You need to go out there and you need to make plays and prove that you are, the veteran and probably, at this moment in time, the best pass rusher on this team. You need to go out and prove that. And then Nolan Smith is the same way. Nolan Smith, you were a first-round draft pick. Last year they kind of eased you into thing. You didn't play as much. This year you outsnapped Bryce Huff. So, at this point, you need to earn and prove that, you are the dominant pass rusher. You need to go out there and sack the quarterback. You need to make plays. And I hope that changes this week. I hope they can get after the quarterback. We're going to play a much better offensive line this week. The Falcons have a good offensive line, but you need to prove that you guys are the players we think and we want you to be. And that just leads into the next point. It leads into, like, if you guys are sacking the quarterback and putting the quarterback under pressure, it's going to make your defensive backs look so much better. And that's why Maddox, I didn't think looked great last week. There was a couple big plays, over the middle being made. We're welcoming Chris into the fold here. We're right now. We just talked about the pass rush. Do you have any comments on the what you expect from the pass rush? I pretty much said it was non-existent last week.
It was bad. It was, and it was one of the things that Brad and I had talked about was, man, just get to the quarterback. And like, it's the same thing here in Atlanta with Kirk Cousins. You just get to the guy. It like with
guys
this defense, you just gotta, if you can I mean, look what happened with Cincinnati today. They got in on Patty Mahomes and he threw 2 picks. He was just not that good today. But that's the thing. When you have this defensive line, you want the Josh Sweats, the Carters, and the Davises to move these dudes to get to him. The fact that last week that Brandon Graham, one, played a lot more snaps than Bryce Huff and was more effective than Bryce Huff. Look, I'm not going to shame on a 35-year-old, but even Brandon Graham knows that's not his role anymore. And the fact that he was one of their tippy top performers on the defensive line last week, that can't happen.
Yeah, I said the same. I said the same exact thing. I said Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, Bryce Huff, you need to be better. I'm not too worried about Carter and Davis on the pass rush. Davis really isn't a pass rusher. He's a run stuffer, but he's so big that he can. You can't double team him because he can just bull rush you back. And that causes pressure. Yeah. But I don't expect him. I don't expect him to lead the team in sacks. I don't expect him to get 5+ sacks. I expect him to be a huge run stopper on this team. So I don't expect too much out of him. If he gets 5+ sacks, fantastic. That's awesome. But
not even a sack. Not even a sack, but at least get pressure.
Yeah. I mean, Nolan Smith and Bryce Huff combined for 2 pressures, and it was Nolan Smith had the 2 pressures. Bryce Huff had 0 pressures. So that's a huge problem from one side of the pass rush. And then Josh Sweat, he wants to get paid. So, but I also mentioned, Chris, I don't know, you probably heard this week Kelce and you heard Howard Eskin both on WIP saying this week that the field being wet and then watering at the end and then playing at 9 o'clock at night in Brazil, they're saying that does have a huge effect on the pass rush for them to be able to get after the quarterback and make those moves. So I'm hoping a different field, a well taken care of field, a normal field, an NFL field, time off, time to review tape, get better. I expect them, to be a little bit better this week, but I mean, last week was awful. So if you're even a little bit better, that's still not great. They need to be a lot better than they were last week.
I feel like it's going to be a running theme this year, John. You and I talked about it. Brad, you and I talked about this. I am going to say it every week until it happens. I really want to see the coming out party of this season from Josh Sweat. I want to see 2 sacks tomorrow, maybe 1.5 sacks.
We thought it was in 2022, and then last year it wasn't the same, and then this year, at the start of the season, it wasn't the same. But who knows? It was one game. Maybe they had a good game plan for these guys. Maybe these guys watched the tape and figured out, a new way to approach rushing the passer, but you can't let a guy like Kirk Cousins just sit in the pocket all week, because he's gonna torch defense. Even if we think Mitchell's gonna be an All Pro player, even if Slay's still playing at a very good level, even if Blankenship's he's been unbelievable for a guy who's been an undrafted guy. You can't let him sit in the pocket. A good quarterback sit in the pocket, because Kirk Cousins isn't terrible, but he can pick you apart. If you give him that time, he's a guy that you need to put under pressure, and that's when in the years past the Eagles have put him under pressure, and he's thrown those interceptions, and he's played poorly, so they need to continue to do that, because unless that doesn't happen, they're going to get picked apart by Kirk Cousins,
especially on Cousins. If they just get to him, they're fine. I can't see him moving around the pocket, not around the pocket. I can't see him moving outside the pocket enough to make like a big impact into the game. As long as they get to him, they're fine.
I agree. I mean, look,
our defensive line.
Yeah, and look, you look at the first week of the season. Cousins again. This was against the Steelers defense, who obviously historically can get to the quarterback, and Kirk Cousins looked terrible last week. 16 of 26, only 155 yards in the air. He had those 2 picks. And their top receiver last week was Ray McLeod with 4 catches and 52 yards. Kyle Pitts was held to 3 catches, but did have the touchdown. Again, if John and Brad, what are your expectations? I don't know if you've already talked about it, but if the Pittsburgh Steelers defense was able to really rattle the Falcons offense last week, what are your guys' expectations? If you haven't talked about it already, if you have, just say shut up and move on. But what are your expectations of what this defense is going to do against Cousins?
Well, that's why we're going to go into the cornerback position, where that's where it's probably going to be the most key important, because I think they have some good weapons on. I think Drake London's a solid player. I think Kyle Pitts can be a good player. You saw him with Matt Ryan; he was the first tight end since Mike Ditka in the '60s to have 1,000 yards, receiving. But he really had nobody to throw the ball to him last year, and they're going to throw the ball a ton with Kirk Cousins. He's a guy who's throwing the ball a ton in this league, and you have a guy like Bijan Robinson back there. The cornerbacks are going to have to step up big this week, and I said Maddox didn't play well. That's why I'm going to go, Isaiah Rodgers, who, fractured his hand. He said he was, I guess he had a pick in practice, and somebody was trying to punch the ball out and they hit his hand and he fractured it something along those lines. But I'm excited to see him play, because he's a guy we've heard all, training camp, how great he's been. We heard a guy all offseason, how good of a player he can be, which, I'm still not sold on him, because why would the Colts get rid of a player who's supposedly a solid, player, just, you just released him. You saw Calvin Ridley, he had the same issue as, Rodgers, where they were both gambling, but he wasn't released. And there's other players in this league who weren't released. So I'm wondering, is he actually that good of a player? Maddox was bad last week. I expect Rodgers to be better than Maddox, but one thing I don't want to see, because, Rodgers has been that guy, taking those reps on the outside. I don't want him to take away snaps from Mitchell at all. Like, Mitchell looked well last week. He looked like he's going to be a stud. He made a few mistakes. Obviously, he's going to make those because he's a rookie. But, I think he needs to play every down outside. And, Rodgers, how he's built, he's a small guy. He's like 5'10", 175 pounds. I mean, I expect, that's a slot corner. He should be playing the slot. Maddox is an older guy. He always gets hurt. He didn't look great last week. So I expect, Rodgers to play that nickel position. And guys, I think you would agree with me there on that point.
Yep.
Yeah, and I said it earlier too. I said it earlier to John too. I was like, I can't see the Falcons going deep, so I'm expecting the safeties and the cornerbacks to have a big game. I just can't see them going deep. Like, who are their weapons that they can go deep with?
Well, London's a pretty talented wide receiver. The problem with London and Pitts, with their issues have been in the past, is they had Desmond Ridder throwing in football. So and he was historically bad. So that was his issue, because Kyle Pitts was a stud. He didn't score many touchdowns, but he produced yards, as a rookie. So that is a problem, because those both of them can be vertical threats if you don't get after the quarterback, which we've in years past, we've played a defense that limits, big plays. And this year you're not seeing that same defense. We're seeing more blitzes. We're seeing, the Zach Bond blitz. We're seeing the Kobe Dean blitz. We're seeing our linebackers move around the field. So I don't expect, I can see them, making big plays still, but they're trying to limit big plays by getting after the quarterback. They're not not in the years past where they're trying to limit big plays by sitting back. And I think that's why the linebacking core looks so much better this year, because it's a defense that makes the linebackers move around. They're not sitting there laid back and standing still. And both Vaughn and Dean they're not those type of players. They need to be able to move around and be shifty and get up, and get in those holes and those gaps to stop the run. So that's what I kind of expect more about this week too. So there may be a few big plays down the field, but I expect, our linebackers to get after the quarterback a little bit more, since, our pass rush is not existing. Because if the pass rush is going to be non-existent, the linebackers are going to be huge here. You have to blitz the linebackers. If guys like Sweat, guys like Huff, if Carter's not, he's not getting after the quarterback, or what's going to be a huge problem is if those guys aren't getting after the quarterback, they're going to just neutralize, Jalen Carter, and he's going to be non-existent on the field, because they're going to double team him. They're going to do everything. Mm-hmm. They're going to be doing different things to, make sure he can't get after the quarterback and disrupt things. So the other guys need to step up, because that'll make Jalen Carter a lot better.
Yeah. Even Nolan Smith, he has to step up. You said it earlier, John. He has to.
I mean, if you're looking for someone to step up, I mean, how does Bryce Huff not make that list?
He's number one on the list, because he's the guy who got paid. And then I would say Sweat is the guy who has to do it again, because he's the guy who's looking for another contract. He wants to get that big payday. He's still pretty young, so he's not Reddick, who's 30 years old, who wants this, mega deal, he's going to refuse to go out there and work for it. You're not going to get it, Hassan Reddick. You're not going to come back to the Eagles. They're not going to give it to you if you don't want to go out there and, go out there and prove that you are still that player. You are a top pass rusher. But these guys are still young enough to prove it. And then Nolan Smith obviously is third. It's only his second year, but you are a first-round pick. A first-round pick, I'm in your second season, I'm expecting some type of production out of that position. You need to at least have 7+ sacks, and prove that you are the reason why we took you in the first round.
I agree.
The next guy I want to go and talk about is Cooper DeJean. It seems like, he's kind of getting back into the groove of things, where, he missed majority of training camp due to an injury that happened, in the off season. He's taking a lot of reps at nickel corner. Is this something that we're going to expect him to be the future nickel corner of this team? Obviously it's probably the weakest part of the secondary. Do you guys also think that's going to be, his position to, win over by the, quickly? I mean, I would expect him to try to win that position over.
I'll tell you what, if Vic Fangio believes it, then I'm going to believe that as well. I mean, Vic Fangio is not going to put a guy like him in that spot if he didn't believe he was versatile and smart enough and didn't have the ability to do so. So I really do think, I think Fangio has a lot of belief in him. And I think it's kind of like a Quinyon Mitchell situation, where I think Mitchell's obviously is a better player, clearly. But I do feel like, Cooper DeJean is a kind of guy, whereas the more he's in there, the more reps he gets, he's going to get it. And I think he's going to be a guy that can produce. Is there going to be some tough weeks? Of course there's going to be tough weeks. Same with Quinyon Mitchell. There's going to be some weeks where you go, oh man, that didn't work out too well. That's just a rookie making a rookie mistake. You just got to hope it's not in big moments. I would like to see DeJean make some high impact plays. Avonte Maddox is that kind of guy where, regardless if he's hurt or not, like the little reps that he gets, there's a lot of times, good or for bad, he's on the field. And I want DeJean to become that kind of guy where once or twice a game, he's in the middle of something. And so I really do think that Fangio is putting this kid in this spot for a reason. Like you said, John, it's the weakest part of that defense. So he's got a completely open opportunity to come in there and steal that for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I always thought his best position was going to be a safety. I just didn't think he was a cornerback in this league. So I always thought like something was going to happen along the lines where, maybe a Maddox went down, somebody in the cornerback position went down, and they moved CJ back to the the slot position where he's played a lot in his career, and they were going to put DeJean back in safety, but it appears that they're ready to throw him right into that nickel position, and I'm hoping we get to see him play a little bit of nickel tomorrow night, in spurts. I'm wondering if this is going to be like a rotating nickel to see if they can find the best guy, see if it's Maddox, see if it's Rodder, see if it's DeJean. Brad, your thoughts on Cooper DeJean?
I think he's good. I love him actually, and like, since he is coming off of that, what he came off of in the off season, he's gonna do exactly what we are expecting him to do. He's gonna go out there and make the plays we need him to make. I don't think he's gonna go through obviously he's gonna go through progressions. He's gonna have ups and downs just like everybody else. But I feel like for the most part, you're gonna see him come through as what he needs to come through with. I can't see him.
He's a smart enough guy to pick up that defense in the scheme. I think he's a smart enough dude to after 2, 3, 4 weeks, he's gonna get it.
Yeah, I think he even in college he was a ball hawk. I think he's gonna that's something this team missed last year a lot. CJGJ, he's another guy who's a ball hawk. It seems Reed Blankenship's another one of those ball hawks where it seems like he's just somewhere all over the field trying to make an interception at some point. But I expect this team needs to make those big plays. You need to turn over the ball. And I know Dallas, that defense kind of got mopped up the field today.
Yeah, that was bad.
But when Dallas's defense is on, those DBs are making plays and picks and pick sixes. Bland's still I believe Bland's still on the IR. He was a big key to that defense last year. He was intercepting the ball at a crazy rate. I'm pretty sure he's the record for most pick sixes in a season. I mean, Diggs is the same way. They have two guys in the corner position who just go out there and ball hawk and make huge plays, which you know what that does? That gives your quarterback great field position, which this team did not have at all last year. And that makes that makes the offense a lot better. And even if Hurts throws that interception and your defense goes out there and makes that pick, that's great confidence for Hurts because Hurts knows, my defense has my back. He knows that his defense is gonna have his back and pick him up, when something doesn't go his way. But let's move on to the final prediction, probably everybody's favorite part, like we predicted the score and what we think is going to go down this week. Chris, I'm going to start with you. What do you expect this week as your predictions for this week?
Look, I think I didn't hear what you guys thought about A.J. Brown being out because I do think it's a big deal. But I do think you're going to have a good game out of Dallas Goedert. I think Dobson's going to finally get into the mix here. He's going to have to. This is the kind of game where
we talked about him and Goedert heavily about how they need to make the impact players this week.
And I do believe this is going to be another Saquon game. I think you could be looking at another Player of the Week award for Saquon Barkley.
I the same thing.
And I think. Yeah, I think, look, people ripped Jalen Hurts last week for throwing 2 picks. Patty Mahomes comes out today and throws two picks as well, but still finds a way to win the game. So that shit's going to happen.
That bothers the hell out of me because, oh, my God, Hurts turned the ball over.
Exactly.
But he won the game. But Mahomes does it, and he's,
he's Patrick Mahomes.
Like he can get away. He can get away. Why can't Hurts when it mattered last week, he escaped the pocket and made those plays to make the first down. He's making plays to Devontae Smith, throwing the ball to Devontae Smith and making those plays late in the game to win the game. But it really bothers the hell out of me sometimes that I think Hurts had one more interception than Mahomes last year. Hurts did fumble the ball too much. He's got to fix that problem. But I mean, he did throw the ball as much as Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, but it seems like Patrick Mahomes is the only guy who's allowed to throw interceptions and get away with it.
So I think the Eagles win this game 34-17. I have over 150 total yards again for Saquon Barkley. I have him scoring 2 more touchdowns. I actually have Jalen Hurts scoring 3 total touchdowns, 2 in the air and 1 on the ground. I have him throwing 0 interceptions tomorrow night. And maybe that's too hopeful, but I really do think what we saw, like all those international games are always sloppy. And I felt like when it came time to the end of the third quarter, into the fourth quarter, the Eagles offense really figured it out. And they finally were able to take care of business and get that opening win. I think things are going to be different at home tomorrow night. I really expect a huge outpouring of offense tomorrow night, even without A.J. Brown. I'm really excited for tomorrow. But again, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the Saquon Barkley show again.
Brad?
Yeah, I honestly feel the same exact way. Maybe a touchdown less than what you said. But I feel like either way, even with AJ out, there's no way that I feel like personally any defense can cover the guys that we have. Even with AJ out, we have Devontae, we have Barkley, we have Dotson, we have Goddard. There's just so many guys you can go to. Not every team has the defense to control him. If you don't pass it to Devontae, you got AJ. If you don't pass it to AJ, you got Barkley. Then you got Dotson. Then you have Goddard. You have so many weapons to do. I feel like it's going to be a touchdown less than what you said. Maybe even exactly what you said. I think I can. I guess I'm gonna give him at least one interception. I feel like there's gonna be a buffer. There's gonna be a buff throw, at least one. I feel like every QB is. I feel like every QB is in for at least one buffer a game. But I'm hoping he doesn't have those. But if it's gonna happen, I feel like it's gonna be early on, and then he's gonna bounce back from it and have an incredible rest of the game. But I feel like it's gonna be an outpour of offense.
Yeah,
I feel like Barkley's obviously gonna have a big game again. I'm guessing at least 2 touchdowns again, at least.
I agree.
Your scoring prediction, Brad?
A touchdown less than what he said. He said 34-17.
Yeah, so you're at 28-17.
Yeah, around there. Yeah,
Okay.
or maybe I said a touchdown less, or maybe even what Chris said. But
okay, so right around the same score, a blowout win.
Yeah, I'm around the same score as you guys. I have 34-20.
Okay.
I think I think Saquon scores a touchdown this week. I think Hurts scores a touchdown. I think Dotson scores a touchdown. He's a guy.
Wow.
He's a guy. Actually, if you look at it, he is the most touchdowns out of the wide receivers in all the wide receivers taken in that draft. He's the most touchdowns scored. He's 11 touchdowns with Washington. I think he's going to find the end zone at some point this week. I think Goddard's also going to score a touchdown today. I think the Eagles are going to rely heavy on him this week in those screen games that they run. That they usually get big plays out of him with. And sometimes they get him down the field as a vertical threat as well. And I think we're going to see a lot of that this week. And then I expect Smith. I don't think he's going to get in the end zone, but I expect him to have a monster week and show everybody that he's not a number 2, that he is a number 1, and we just have the luxury of having 2 number 1s on this team. So
for a TD, I have him for a TD.
I have Devontae catching almost 10 balls tomorrow night.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see a lot of what you saw of young Keenan Allen this week. A lot of what you saw when Keenan Allen would go up when he was the number 1 receiver. I think that's I think that's who he is as a player. I think he is the exact same player. I think he's a great round runner. He just has a knack for finding the open space in the field and getting there. And Hurts is going to find him a lot this week.
Yep.
And towards the end of the game last week, they started Devontae has some key first down catches. So I feel like with AJ out, he's going to get even more of them.
Yep. And that's about what's going to wrap up for this week's show. We are sponsored by SeatGeek, so use that ring the bell code for 20% off your first ticket purchase. And most importantly, go Birds.
Go Birds.